we've been conditioned to cut our sexuality off, that there's something wrong with it or dirty or shameful or something to be embarrassed about.
Hello, and welcome to Holistic Ambition, where we talk with visionary leaders who are redefining what it means to be ambitious. We cover ways that you can live with more well-being, meaning, and fun in your career, business, and relationships. I'm your host, Stephanie Thoma, life coach for ambitious professionals and author of Confident Introvert. I'm so excited to announce our guest today, Alicia Davon. Alicia Davon, along with her husband, Erwan, has become the go-to expert for those seeking a higher level of relationship support since 1995. They are among the most experienced relationship coaches in the world and have taught throughout the US and abroad. Both have advanced degrees in psychology, developed a method that covers everything from sex to the mind to lifestyle design to how to get into and thrive throughout the stages of a relationship from a feminine and a masculine perspective. Based in the SF Bay Area, Alicia provides a high-end boutique service that gives her clients effective ways to enhance their relationships. She and Erwan offer all their coaching classes in both online and in-person formats and support students all over the world. Oh my goodness. So I just kind of want to dive in with the concept of scheduling sex. I went to one of your in-person workshops, and that was something that really stood out to me. So I'd love for you to share about that.
Well, scheduling sex is a controversial topic. Of course, there are some people that say, oh, sex is supposed to be spontaneous and scheduling it means that there's something wrong or it's not fun or it's contrived or whatever it is. There's that camp. And then there's the other camp that kind of say, well, if we don't schedule it, we're not going to have it. So why don't we schedule it? And I'm a fan of the latter. Erwan and I have been together for over 20 years, and we've always had a really great sex life for a lot of reasons. I mean, we have great chemistry, but even more important than that, we prioritize our sex life getting better and better over time. And one of the things that we found personally as parents and business owners and just busy people is that if we have it in our calendar, it's definitely going to happen. And I'm saying this is from two people that love sex, teach about sex, are very present to sex. We even fall into the, well, if it's not scheduled, it may not happen. So I'm a huge fan of scheduling it. And you kind of have to decide that you're going to be enthusiastic about it, because your mind and the critical mind can come in and say, well, something's wrong with this. If I'm not feeling the urge to throw my partner up against the wall and make love to them, then something's wrong with our relationship. No, that's the movies. That's a fantasy. If you keep the chemistry rolling deliberately, then it's more likely to be there spontaneously also.
Right. Okay. So it's this concept of if you schedule your intimacy, it could happen then and more. So it's really just introducing more consistency, but there's still room for that spontaneity, which I think is such a great point to bring up. And, when it comes to Tantra, I know a lot of people's first sort of thoughts that come up when they think of Tantra would be maybe Sting talking about his experiences of having sex for a full day. And can you let us know about how real people can experience Tantra, or, what are your thoughts on even sexual experiences that last, 12 hours, that sort of thing?
This is such a great topic because there's many ways to look at it. So, and to speak for a moment on how you look at things, that is everything. You can decide, for example, that sex doesn't have to be limited to just intercourse on Wednesday nights in missionary position with the lights off. A lot of people think, well, that's sex, nothing else counts. Or you can decide that you're going to include all sex acts, flirting, kissing, exchanging energy, obviously oral sex, penetrative sex, manual stimulation, all of it. you could call all of that sex. So you really get to decide how you want to live. So this is like a general thing I'm saying right now. It doesn't only apply to sex, but sometimes we are victimized by what we think we should be doing or what our sex should look like and what counts and what doesn't count. I like to broaden that definition as wide as possible. So then it's not like you're lying to yourself, like, oh, I'm shopping in the grocery store. This is sex too, but at the same time, you can be so embodied walking through those grocery store aisles and feeling your pelvic area and your genitals and like smiling at someone cute in the frozen food aisle. And like, you could have that yummy experience of sensual energy running through your body. That impacts your life and makes you feel more abundant. So I want to say that to give everybody permission to include as much as possible in their sex life and what they define as sex. Now, if we go into Tantra, some people hear that word Tantra and they're like, ooh, what's that? We have to be, wearing fancy clothes and in some sort of complex yogic position and reaching enlightenment. And I can't do that. I don't even know what that is. And, Tantra to me is simply bringing presence and awareness into the body and into the sex center so that you get to experience that yummy turn on, the ache in your genitals and the hard and the wet and that ecstatic sexual experience at the same time as being totally connected to whatever you consider source or spirit or that whatever that is, it has you feel connected to everything. That's Tantra, bringing those two together. And that can be experienced within ourselves and our own bodies. That can be experienced with someone new, and that can be experienced with someone that we've been with for a really long time. So us regular people, we can experience that beautiful presence, including the genitals. A lot of times in spiritual traditions, the sexual pleasure is cut out and even demonized. So I'm a fan of bringing all of those things back together as one to be enjoyed. And it doesn't mean you have to have these, 8-hour-long sexual experiences you hear about, but you could if you want to. You could consider a day-long date with somebody a whole sexual experience, even if at certain points your clothes aren't off and, you're laying in the park looking at the sky, but you're connected and feeling each other's energy. So yeah, there's a lot of possibility.
Yeah, you bring up such great points around foreplay, being a part of the sexual experience, and that being, you mentioned embodiment, like being in the grocery store and carrying yourself in a really confident, present way. And, a theme that keeps on coming up from what you're sharing is a sense of presence, and how tantric sex, it can be something that is fast. It can be slow. It can be the buildup to it. So let's say that someone tuning in is in a long-term relationship and that spark that once existed is more or less diminished. What are some ways to reignite that?
So this is one of the main reasons that couples come to work with Erwan and me. So we work with both singles and couples. These days in 2023, there's many places on the spectrum we can be in terms of the form of our relationship. And but when couples come to us and they've been together for some period of time and the spark has waned and they've either become like roommates or co-parents or logistical partners, or all of those things are taking precedence in their life over the romantic and sexual connection. There's a lot that can be done. So the first step, of course, is to acknowledge it. I mean, it's cliche now that, once you're this many months in, this many years in, the person's like your ball and chain, the sex goes away. It's like a joke because it's so common. And often one or both partners can kind of silently suffer about that or be resentful or complain or go seek excitement outside the relationship in secrecy, or think, okay, now we need to have an open relationship because I need to get that need met somehow. I'm not saying open relationships are ultimately a bad idea. I'm not saying they're a good idea. I'm just saying if you do that in order to fix a problem in the relationship, it's likely to explode. So that's another topic we could get into, since I know this whole open relationship situation is becoming more popular in certain circles. So the first step is acknowledge it, ideally positively. Hey, we don't have much of a spark these days, and I really want to get back to that connection with you, and I love you, and we've just kind of gotten lost in logistics and house and family and work. Okay, so once you've acknowledged it, the second thing that I would do is create time and space in your schedules, back to the schedule, for what Erwan and I like to call pleasure time. So it doesn't have to be sexual yet. I mean, it can be, but some couples find like it's been so long, or sexual activity has been so infrequent that like it's awkward now, or, often when women have babies, either they give birth vaginally, or they have a C-section, or even women, that adopt or have a child in some other way, their whole life changes, and often their bodies and their hormones change. So that may have happened. Lots of reasons why it may be tough to kind of get right back to the sexual activity. So you want to start with pleasure time. That's time when you're not distracted by other things. You're not watching Netflix. Netflix is fine, but you're like there to be together. And what you do with that time can range. Erwan and I have a set of touching practices that we train couples in that range from like totally non-sexual kind of nurturing touch, kind of like that event that you helped out with at the center in San Francisco, how we were doing those nice touching practices. And they're clothed and they're nurturing. And then you kind of go along the spectrum, and they get more sensual, and they can lead to sexual touching. But the idea is that you don't have to go from 0 to 100 or expect yourselves to suddenly be like ravenously turned on towards your partner, and, this amazing sex happens, and then you're left, or it's supposed to happen, and then you're left disappointed. I say take the pressure off, just start doing something that feels good. And our bodies don't have a problem getting turned on. It's our minds, it's distraction, it's insecurities, it's unresolved relationship issues. So, this is a long answer, but I'm really wanting to speak to all the complexity that goes on in couples. And I just don't want people to feel like it should be some easy, simple thing. It doesn't need to be like terrible and arduous and so complex you never get to the sex, but just to have some space and compassion for the complexity. So, second step, having time and space, and then engaging physically and sensually with each other. Often that tends to just naturally lead to people getting turned on, and they end up being sexual, and that's great. And if you have time and space to do that, ideally multiple times a week, then a lot of that issue is handled.
Yeah. So, there's so many points that you've brought up here. And I keep coming back to this element of presence, but, there are a couple things that I want to ask about. One is, in a lot of spiritual spaces, for example, ENM, ethical non-monogamy, is something that's brought up. And, I'd like for you to expand upon that point a bit, maybe not necessarily being the best fix if a relationship is not going ideally already. But, let's say that maybe there is someone tuning in who's interested in exploring that lifestyle. I'd like us to go into that. And then I also have a question around what makes someone good in bed. What is the difference between someone who is probably not hitting the mark 9 times out of 10 versus hitting the mark 10 times out of 10?
Yes, great questions. Okay, so first, ethical non-monogamy. So this is becoming more widely known as an option, especially in circles that we run with. You're in Austin, I'm in San Francisco. We, kind of tend towards events and circles and people that are exploring personal growth, consciousness, possibilities of living that are outside the box. And that is fantastic. And there's a lot of ways to have non-monogamy work, and there's a lot of ways that can have it really not work and be damaging to a relationship. So the most important thing when contemplating being non-monogamous, opening up your relationship in some way, to include other people, however that looks for you, is that the primary relationship is really firing on all cylinders. It doesn't mean everything's perfect, but it means like both of you are really gratified with the sex, the chemistry, the connection, the communication, you feel safe with each other. It doesn't mean there's not room to grow, but that it's not from a place of lack. If you're coming from a place of lack, that is a Band-Aid, thinking that non-monogamy is going to, juice up the relationship, or one person wants more sex, so it's just going to get their need met. Unless the other person's having like as much sex as they want with the primary partner, and they're so filled up and they're so happy and so fulfilled, they've got this extra that they're like, sure, honey, go, like grab, get a lover, that's fine. Or why don't we bring someone into the bedroom or whatever? Don't do it until you've made it so your primary relationship is really in good shape. Something that couples that have been together for a long time contend with, like we were talking about, is decreased chemistry and turn on. One of the things that Erwan and I teach in our school is a sensual practice called extended orgasm. I'm just going to touch on this. It's a whole topic in and of itself. It's very exciting. But essentially, it addresses the potential that all of our bodies have to feel so much pleasure, have extended states of pleasure and orgasm in our bodies if we are relaxed enough and aroused enough and being touched in a way that we really like. And the most optimal way to do this is through a manual stimulation technique that we demonstrate and we teach. This practice of extended orgasm is gold for a couple. It's the cornerstone of an amazing sex life. And it is, I'm bringing it up now because it's a really great skill to learn to have your relationship consistently getting better and better sensually. It's a really easy practice you can do if, let's say, there's a man and a woman. Let's just use that example. And the woman's like turned on and she has all this sex energy and she wants to feel it. And maybe the guy is like tired or he doesn't really feel like having a whole big old sex act, but he can stroke her clitoris for 20 minutes and she can get off and feel amazing and filled up, right? Or the reverse. So when a couple has this type of sensual practice in their relationship, they're more likely to have a nice, abundant, flowing energy between them. And then I'm not saying that extended orgasm is means to the end of ENM, but it tends to kind of resolve that issue of the couple not having enough sensual activity between the two of them. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to bring it in. So if the couple is authentically both wanting to bring other people into the relationship and their own relationship is firing on all cylinders, then that's a good time to explore it. So I'll stop there to see if you have any follow-up questions about everything I said.
Yeah, no, I think that all ties in. It all ties in together where there is room and space to explore, that without it being a Band-Aid solution to, feeling like other aspects of life or other aspects of partnership are less than full, where maybe there could be a conversation, maybe there could be opportunity to engage in what you call pleasure time. So, kind of going back to this if you were to have one tip that, let's say that someone listening in right now, let's say that they're currently single, maybe they're, currently dating, or they're kind of, let's say that they've been celibate for a while, they're looking to get back in that. What is something that differentiates, and kind of going back, what differentiates someone who's good in bed versus not?
Yeah, good. Yes. Back to that question. The most important thing about being good in bed is presence and being in your body and feeling your body and connected to your partner. And I'm not saying it has to be some, very serious connection or something like that. But sometimes we think, okay, this needs to be performative, or how I look, or how I'm dressed, or does she have an orgasm? Does he ejaculate? Like, all of these things are what gives us good lover status versus not good lover status. But it's a little different I'm using men and women. This can be mapped on to the masculine person, the feminine person for same-sex couples. So I'm going to use man and woman more for ease, but it can be translated to any type of gender role in the sex act. I'll say for women, being a good lover includes presence. It includes focusing on your own pleasure, which is something women are not taught to do, but focusing on your pleasure, what feels good, what you want, and then being able to ask for that in a friendly way. If you do those things, you will be a good lover. And this does not exclude the male's pleasure at all. It is that the feminine person, or the woman, we are the heat source in a sex act. Like, if we're not turned on and authentically having a good time and getting what we want, the sex act isn't that great. Maybe, if you saw it in a movie, it might look good, the way porn sort of looks good, right? But is she actually feeling? Is she actually enjoying? So you're like, biologically, we carry the heat and the sensual energy. So that needs to be addressed. There's much less expertise with a woman's genitals than there is with a man's genitals, meaning that more people know how to handle the male genitals and kind of what to do, versus people that know how to handle a woman's genitals and know where everything is and where to find the clitoris and what kind of stroke and all of this. And then for men, what makes you a good lover is your presence, your attentiveness, your ability to know what she wants, give it to her. And women are we're just naturally giving creatures. I mean, if we're turned on and we're lit up and we're having what we want, of course, we're going to not reciprocate because we don't owe anything. But, Erwan has no problem having his sexual needs handled. Let me put it that way, because he's so attentive to mine, and it's not a tradey thing. It's just a very natural flow.
Yeah. So, this concept of really a woman presence, but also a woman being able to be expressive and receptive and genuinely excited to kind of catalyze the whole experience, where the masculine party is able to really deliver, that experience that the woman is asking for. And, especially in the personal growth spaces, there can be a lot of talk about how different, let's say, childhood patterns impact how we are as adults, also in the bedroom. So I'm curious, when it comes to, let's say that someone comes to you and they'd like to overcome an unhealthy relationship or sexual pattern that's inherited from childhood. Can you let us know about how that would be navigated?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's important across the board, but particularly with what we were just talking about around female sexuality and our ability to know what we want sexually and feel good enough about that to be excited about it and to verbalize that and to ask for that. That's very challenging for a lot of women. And the reason that it's so challenging is because we were conditioned, some women, maybe this is not the case, but for most women and myself, I come across to some degree, we've been conditioned to cut our sexuality off, that there's something wrong with it or dirty or shameful or something to be embarrassed about. And one of the main topics that we teach about in all of our classes, we do like a several week series on this in our Mastery of Relationship class, is female sexual psychology, where basically we focus on how to heal that split between our sexual selves. We all have it. We're ravenous. We're hungry. We were interested in sex. We want pleasure. We know that that's a very good, right part of us. It's very close to the essence of who we are. So that's the sexual self. And then there's the non-sexual self, that conditioned self. And some of us have had very heavy conditioning, either adverse sexual experiences and trauma. Unfortunately, that is very, very common. Religious upbringing, just messaging from parents and teachers, whatever, you name it, right? The culture. So there's often a split within us of like, we want it and we shouldn't want it. And then we're just sort of stuck, and we do all sorts of things to kind of deal with that, either shut ourselves down or maybe act out sexually without presence and everything in between. So that's an example of how childhood experiences can affect our current sexual reality. And men too, men have their own huge dose of conditioning around sex and sexuality and relationships. So the way that Erwan and I deal with that is we really bring in a psychological aspect to our work, because even though, we're relationship and sex coaches, if you're addressing relationship and sex, you can't not address your psychology, because that's, they're just tied together. So becoming aware of what we call your relationship blueprint, which is that usually unconscious conditioning from childhood that gives our reality now. Through meditation, through depth psychological inquiry, which we teach people in our classes and we do with people in our coaching, and really getting in touch with what comes up in a romantic or sexual situation, feeling into it, understanding it, going beyond just cognitively understanding your patterns. I mean, that's really great to know, okay, well, this came from that and this came from this experience, but nothing can replace being able to be present in the moment, like you're on a date with somebody and you can feel it heating up and you imagine you might be able to go home and be sexual later, but like whatever comes up for you right there, that's your conditioning, like whatever it is, fear or attachment or, terror or, whatever it is, reliving of past experiences, being with that, feeling it in your body and starting to distinguish that from reality. So I would start there.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, diving into your upbringing, diving into your clients' upbringings, certainly being a parent yourself, that would kind of bring things full circle of having the potential to be very conscious of the conditioning, of a new person in the world. So, I'm curious about a couple of things here about when it comes to running a business with your husband and also running a business with your husband while parenting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So is there a specific question you want me to answer or just talk about it?
Yeah. So kind of like bringing romance and passion back. I know we talked about the scheduling sex component, but when do you ever take, let's say, time and space away from the business? How do you create those healthy boundaries within your business to make time for the relationship and your child?
Yeah. So it's all very deliberate because our work, our school, it's very I mean, we can always be engaged in it. It's the most fascinating thing. We love it, talking to people about their romantic lives and sex lives. And then there's the kind of school side of it and building our community and everything. I mean, it's our everything, not all, but it's just such a huge part of our life. And so Erwan and I have our own time almost every day, our pleasure time where our son's at school, and we do our sensual practice and lay together and just kind of be together physically, whatever that looks like, usually something sexual, at least extended orgasm, but also like massage or deep touch and hanging out. And that can be anywhere from like half hour to 45 minutes most days of the week. So we do that. And in terms of our son, I'm a huge fan of making sure that the relationship is in good shape, and that being the biggest gift that you can give your child. There's a lot of pressure these days. Oh my God, you have to be everything to your child, and you should feel guilty if you spend time away from them and all of this. I have that comes up for me all the time. And I found that the better Erwan and I are doing, and the more time we take for going out on a Friday night, Saturday night, or even during a day, and having Aiden with his like favorite sitter for 3 hours on a Sunday because we want to go hang out at the center and just be together, the happier we are and the happier Aiden is. And so I think it's really, really important to nurture the primary relationship. People get very caught up in focusing on their kids. I mean, myself included, of course, it's so hard not to, but it's really, really important. The other day I was texting some of my mom friends and I was looking for new sitters for my list. And a bunch of them were like, oh man, we haven't had a sitter in so long. Like, God, we need to do that. I'm like, man, we do. Yeah, I think that it's very healthy for a child not to be the center of attention all the time.
Yeah. And, even to that point, this past weekend, I went to not a baby shower, but a mother initiation sort of, spiritual experience where the focus got to be on, the mother to be her experience, being in, a circle of women, both mothers and not mothers, who were sharing their experiences and their excitement and their wisdom. So, this isn't to say that, the child in the picture will not be loved or acknowledged or, really cared for. But, I really love what you've brought to light here, which is putting the relationship first enables you to set a really healthy example for Aiden. Mm-hmm. And that can only really serve, how he is in the world and all of his relationships that much better. So,
mm-hmm.
In this age of martyrdom where, you see moms running around and with half a power bar hanging out of their mouth, it's like,
yes.
What's down?
Yeah, no, it's not to be looked up to. I mean, of course, we all do that sometimes, but it's definitely not something to strive for. I mean, I think the better that we're doing ourselves, being emotionally healthy as much as we can, helps us be better moms to our kids. I mean, I know that if I'm extra reactive with Aiden, it's not usually because he's doing anything wrong. I mean, he's being a kid, he's 6.5, he's doing what he's doing. And if I've got the reserves to be present and be with him, it goes much better. If I'm already kind of harried and like stressed and pulled in different directions, it doesn't go so well.
So, I'm curious, when it comes to ambition, how do you define that in a broad sense?
It's a great question. I think that ambition has a lot to do for me with passion and energy and really going all in on something. So ambition, of course, is related to success for a lot of people. Sometimes it can be like reaching something like of followers or money or clients or whatever it is. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. I think, though, ambition can be used the best and be the most sustainable if we're all in on something. When you just go all in on anything, like on playtime with your child, on leading an event, on a date. People encounter, okay, they're dating and they're like, okay, the apps and da da da, and I'm going on another first date. I'm just going to go, fine, I'll go through the motions. It's not really likely to go that well. But if you just decide, you know what, I'm going to go full on here, I'm going to, dress in a way that makes me feel good and flirt and really focus and meet the person, get to know the person, it's more likely to go well, and you're less likely to be held back in your mind. So ambition to me really has a lot to do with going for it fully and being fully present.
I totally know that people listening right now are going to get some downloads from that, the energy of being all in. And when you think about holistic ambition in particular, what does that mean to you, that flavor?
What it makes me think of is that, because even when I say the word ambition, my mind automatically goes to I picture, business suits and graphs and spreadsheets, things like that, that purely conditioning, right? Like ambition has to do with this kind of thing. But holistic ambition really feels like going all in, bringing all your passion and energy to whatever area really lights you up. Holistic ambition, you could be completely and totally ambitious, passionate, energetic, all in on your meditation practice, on parenting, on building your business, on your health and well-being. So that's what it means to me as you're asking in this moment.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that elaboration. And so many different topics that we've gotten to cover today. I'm sure that there are people tuning in that are like, I want more from Alicia. So how can people stay connected with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So you can find us on social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Davon Method. And there's some really fun and educational videos always being produced on there. Our website is davonmethod.com. And then if anybody listening is like, yeah, I'm interested in learning more about working with Alicia and Erwan, or at least finding out about their programs, you can also set up a time to chat with me. The best way to set that up actually is just to text our school. I'll get the text. The number is 415-308-9580.
Amazing. So everyone get your phones out, go ahead and text that number. And I would like to thank you so much for your time today, Alicia, and thank you at home for watching. Consider this your invitation to subscribe to be the very first to know of the next holistic ambition speaker in our series. Wishing you a beautifully connected and present day. Until next time.